Okay, so let's see the practical app you are going to develop at the end of these lessons. So this is the source code you will be developing, and once you run it, you will see a web application, and this is a survey system. You are going to develop a real world survey system, and this is a complete project where the admin can log in, can register if they want, or they can log in using their previous credentials. Likewise, and sign in, and then admin will be taken to the admin dashboard, which has lots of options such as to define the questions. These are all coming from the database dynamically, and you will learn how to add, edit, delete the data and populate the data dynamically likewise, and define the questions so the data will appear dynamically. And then you will learn how to create settings pages and save the data to the database once again, and see who are the respondents who has taken this survey, and with the log information. You will learn how to create sophisticated search dashboards, and you will learn about how to filter data and search, where admin can find information about different users who has taken the survey. So and then if I log out, and then a normal user, if a normal user comes to the home page, a normal user can start taking the survey. A user can register if needed, or if not, a user can take it anonymously. User will be able to take this anonymously. Let's say if this is test2 user, so test2 at, so, and if user says no, I don't want to register, and if user says next, then the survey will start anonymously, and all the data is coming from the database. So you learn about connecting to a remote database, which is not in this computer, it's on a remote server. So you will learn how to do that, and then you will learn how to take the survey questions, and there will be multiple survey questions. So I will just fast forward this. So I fast forwarded the questions, I just click next and answered them. And final question is, what is the state? So if the user says okay, this is the state, and click next, and these are the questions I answered. So and then the user or the respondent can review them and submit the answers. So then the data will go into the remote database. So you will learn about how to save it, and click next, and then it takes the user or the respondent back to the home page. So this is the app you will be developing at the end of these lessons. And the specialty of this app is it's a data driven app, and it's completely dynamic, and all the data is coming from the database, and there is admin dashboard, a sophisticated admin dashboard, and a separate user sessions. You will learn the complete source code from the scratch to develop this. So let's go and develop this application now. Let's start doing it now. A normal HTML button for cancel. So let's see why it is now. Let's also put an image. So right click on the images and say open in Explorer, and then just copy the image of your choice over here, and then just add that as we have done earlier. Right click, add existing item, because you copied it over here, and then quickly you can drop a image here. Let's go to the toolbox, and then let's select image, and then quickly go to the property of the image and image URL, select that new image, survey 1. That's the new image we added, and then quickly give width, let's say of 200 pixels. Awesome. Now then the button click event for next. So what you want to do when you click next is, you want to have this email and pass it to the next page, right? So in that case, there are multiple ways of doing it. So one of the ways is to add it to the session. So if you are not sure what is a session, look at our previous lessons. So what you do is so because you want to access the session, that is why we put this as a ASP button, because to access a session you need C# coding. That is why the button is a ASP button. But for cancel, you don't need to write any C# code. That is why we put a HTML button. So now that's the reason why one is a ASP button and one is a HTML button. So now let's double click on the next. So then it will take us to the C# code. Now in the C# code, let's add the email into the session. So to add the email into the session, you will write this code in the button click. So you will access the session and you will give a key. You can give X even, but let's say respondent email. And from the text box, because we gave ID to our text box, so text box email, the ID of the text box. So once again, if you look at this, the text box, if you look at the property palette, the text box is text box email. So what you are telling is text box email dot text. You will see when you put a dot, you can access the properties. So that's number one. Then second thing is, if the yes button is selected, then we want to do one thing, and if the no button is selected, we want to do another thing. So because of that, right, what we do is we can put a if condition and check that. So let's put a if condition, and then you have given names for the radio buttons. So let's go and check that. So we haven't given ID for the radio button. So let's go to the ID because we need to access them. We'll call this as, let's say, radio button register yes, and then the other one we will call it as radio button register no. So now we gave the IDs as those two IDs. So now we can access the two radio buttons from over here. So in the if condition, what you can say is you can put, say, if that you give ID now called register radio button yes dot check. That means is this selected. So if else means it is not selected, which means the no button is selected. So if the yes button is selected, what do you want to do? So if the yes radio button is selected, you want to go to the register page. Otherwise, you want to go to the survey page. So we have not yet created those two pages. So we will keep this empty for now. But let's run this and okay. Now one thing, for you to understand this, I need to do a small thing actually. I need to at least create a dummy page and keep. So what I will do is this. So I'm going to create an empty registration page for now. So right click on the project and say add and say new item, and then select web form with master because we want the same template, and then let's call it as respondent register ASP page. Click add and then select the master, and let's, at the moment it is empty. So when you look at respondent register page, it is empty. So let's just go to the design and let's put the heading, right? Let's put respondent register. Let's keep it only with the heading for now. So let's put respondent registration page. Let's press enter and keep, and then let's do the initial stuff. Let's make it bold and let's make it H3, and then also let's put a background color, which we normally do. Okay, and now let's say what I want to do is, from the start survey page, if user click yes, I want to go to that registration page. So how do you go into that? How do you do this is you have to redirect. So let's redirect to that page now. So to redirect, the command is you have to access the response object and say redirect, and then you will be going to this. So for you to understand what is this response object, you have to look at the previous lessons before this. and then you will say this. Now let's run and see whether this works. So when we click the yes button, okay, there are some errors, we have to solve it. So let's click the error list, which is at the bottom left error list, and it says a curly bracket is expected. Yes, because there's a missing curly bracket here. So sorry, if you look here, you can see there's a missing curly bracket. So let's, once we put that, this will be working. And now if I click on yes, so let's say start survey, and let's say the user click yes. If user click no, it will not go anywhere because we haven't written anything for the no button. But if user click yes, I should register, it goes to the respondent registration page. So now that is done. But one thing, when the email is empty, I don't want the user to go to the next page. I don't want the respondent to go to the next page. So for that, we have to do an email validation. So now let's do that validation. We'll have to put a validation controller, and let's do it now. So to put a validation controller, close this running project, then go to the start survey page, right? Just click. If you don't see it, just click like this and click once again, and then go to the design. That's where we can put a validation controller from the property palette. So what you do is, just next to the text box, just move, click your cursor just next to the text box, and then go to the toolbox, and from this there's a section called validation. And once again, if you are not if you are new to this, look at our previous lessons about validations. What we want is a required field validator. So double click on required field validator, and then while it's selected, let's put a color immediately, so the user, we can alert the user. Just so this required field will appear only if the user leaves it empty. So that's why I put red color as a warning. Now I want to connect this validator into the text box. So for that, I have to go to the source. I have to go to the source while clicking that, and now I have to give ID, meaningful ID for this validator, and connect it to the text box. Let's do it now. So first of all, we will give a meaningful ID into this validator. So we will call it as required field validator email. The second thing is we can give a meaningful message. So let's give a meaningful message into this. So let's call it as let's put the message as, say, email cannot be empty, so that it is a meaningful message. So let's say error message. If I select this, error message is email cannot be empty, and then the control to validate. So I have to put a property at the end. So let's put an extra property to connect it to the text box. So the property is control to validate. So just make sure you go to the corner of that element, be very careful, and then over here just type control to validate. That's a property, and then over here just connect it to text box email, because your text box you are going to validate is text box email. So now to the validator you will say control to validate is text box email. Now with that, when you run this, you can achieve the expected behavior of validating this email text box. So if I start survey now, and if I try to click next, it's trying to do the validation, but what has happened is the validation is not configured. Once again, have a look at our previous lessons for you to get a detailed understanding about this. So we have discussed the solution for this in previous lessons. So the solution is to enable the validation, which in the web.config. So let's do it now. So in the web.config, what you do is you have to go and add a code snippet, which is what I'm going to do now. So after, let's say after connection string, make sure you add this app settings, and you have to add a key validation settings : unobtrusive validation mode, and just put the value none. Have a look at the previous lessons to understand this. So once you do this into the web.config, that error will not come and the validation will start working. So now if I click on start survey and if I say click next, now it says email cannot be empty because it's validating. So until I put an email, it won't work. So if I put an email, let's say John, and then if I click next, right, now I have not selected a radio button, but the validation controller error is not there. So now if I select yes and click next, it's going to the registration page plus the button inside the next the code inside the next button. If you remember, if you go to the start survey and if you look at the design and if you click on next, so what the next does is it adds the email into the session so the other pages can use it, and then it's going to the respondent registration page. Okay, let's see what's next. We will do one final decoration and stop this part. So just select the controller and make it ball. So let's see what's next. So we did a practical demonstration and the conclusion is you learn about the start survey page. We'll be using these references during this lecture. So make sure to look at the next lessons to complete this project. So it's a complete project and we will show you how real world developers are developing web applications. So make sure to look at the next lesson. We are very excited to see you in the next lesson and see you all in the next lesson.